Behind the grand stadium lights and cheering crowds, a silent war was brewing. For over a decade, the Invictus Games was Prince Harry's proudest achievement, a sanctuary built to honor wounded veterans and restore his purpose. But behind the scenes, a growing crisis began to threaten everything. Public outrage erupted over massive production costs, Hollywood-style PR maneuvers, and claims that the spotlight had shifted away from the heroes on the field. When board members and veteran advocates finally pushed back from within, Harry was left stunned. The sanctuary he built to heal his own past was suddenly fracturing under the weight of an unexpected backlash. How did a noble cause become a battlefield of royal ambition? And what happens when a prince realizes the very thing he created to save his legacy might be slipping through his fingers? Prince Harry always felt like a man looking for his place in the world. Growing up as the spare prince inside the British royal family, his path was mapped out by strict tradition, heavy duty, and relentless public judgment. But inside that rigid royal shell was a young man deeply wounded by grief and loss. When he joined the military, everything changed. On the battlefields of Afghanistan, no one cared about his crown or his royal bloodline. To the soldiers standing beside him, he was simply Captain Wales. For the first time in his life, Harry felt real purpose, deep brotherhood, and true belonging. When his active military service was cut short due to security concerns, Harry was heartbroken. He lost his sanctuary. But out of that profound loss, a powerful new dream was born. In 2014, inspired by the Warrior Games in the United States, Harry founded the Invictus Games. It was designed as an international adaptive sports event for wounded, injured, and sick service members. For Harry, Invictus was never just a charity. It was a sacred space of healing for veterans who had given everything for their countries. It was also his own personal redemption, the one place where he felt truly seen, respected, and loved as a leader in his own right. For years, the Invictus Games represented the very best of Prince Harry. The early events were raw, humble, and intensely emotional. Audiences around the world watched a royal prince sit on the grass, comfort crying veterans, and hug grieving families. The media praised his genuine warmth and dedication. Invictus became his crown jewel, proof that he could build a lasting global legacy outside the long shadow of his older brother, Prince William. However, as the years passed and Harry's personal life underwent a massive public transformation, subtle shifts began to occur behind the curtain. The raw, grassroots mission focused on military recovery began blending with high-end global media production. What started as a modest sports tournament for wounded heroes was quietly preparing to enter a glossy new era, one that would challenge the very heart of why the Games were built in the first place. As the Games grew into a massive global phenomenon, a subtle shift occurred behind the scenes, leaving veteran organizers to wonder if the humble heart of the movement was being slowly replaced by something far more calculated. By the time the Invictus Games expanded to international venues in Europe and North America, the event had evolved into a massive media enterprise. Prince Harry was no longer just a royal patron. He was now half of a global celebrity couple. When Meghan Markle officially stepped into his world, the visual landscape of Invictus transformed almost overnight. The raw, humble sports arenas were suddenly framed by multi-million-dollar production setups, sleek lighting rigs, and professional documentary crews recording every single interaction for streaming giants. At first, many supporters celebrated this new level of glamour. Higher visibility meant more awareness for wounded soldiers, which had always been the main goal. But behind the scenes, the daily logistics of managing the Games became wildly complicated. Extensive private security details, exclusive VIP access zones, and luxury wardrobe management began dominating the event schedule. Camera crews followed Meghan through backstage and athlete villages, creating a glossy, Hollywood-style environment that felt increasingly distant from a traditional military gathering. Within the veteran community, uncomfortable whispers began to spread. Athletes who had trained for years to stand on the track found themselves competing under the heavy glare of celebrity press, where headlines focused far more on designer outfits and royal drama than on athletic triumphs. Critics pointed out that large portions of the event's operational attention were being consumed by executive staging and high-stakes public relations management. To Prince Harry, this new direction felt completely natural. He genuinely believed that bringing A-list media attention to Invictus was the ultimate gift he could give his veterans. In his mind, high production value equaled maximum respect for the soldiers. But he failed to notice the growing disconnect. While Harry saw a grand platform designed to lift everyone up, longtime organizers and veteran advocates saw a quiet takeover. The focus was subtly shifting from the quiet resilience of wounded soldiers to the highly polished narrative of a royal couple building an American empire. While Harry firmly believed the Hollywood spotlight was elevating his life's mission, a quiet rebellion was brewing among the very sponsors and board members who funded the event. Behind closed doors, the mounting frustration finally reached a boiling point. The Invictus Games Foundation began receiving serious pushback from corporate sponsors, military charities, and veteran organizations. Public outrage was growing online over reports of ballooning operational budgets. Critics began highlighting the staggering costs calculated per competitor, pointing out that millions were being spent on luxury travel, executive lodging, and elaborate media branding maneuvers, while some veteran teams struggled to fund basic travel arrangements for their families. Petitions began circulating within veteran networks demanding an immediate return to the original charter of the Games. Respected military figures spoke out, expressing deep disappointment that an event created for wounded warriors had turned into what many described as a personal publicity platform. Corporate partners, whose multi-million-dollar investments kept the charity alive, expressed deep concern over being tied to ongoing royal controversy and negative press headlines. The board of directors found itself in a desperate position. Major sponsors made it clear, if the public perception of the Games did not immediately shift back to the veterans, financial backing would be pulled for future events. Hard data was presented to leadership showing that public trust was rapidly eroding. The prominent, elevated role occupied by Meghan Markle was becoming a central point of division between organizers and traditional military supporters. Prince Harry was summoned to emergency meetings where he was confronted with a harsh reality he never saw coming. Board members presented damning reports detailing the loss of public goodwill and the threat of financial ruin. Harry was stunned. He had spent years defending his choices, believing he was protecting his new life and expanding his foundation's reach. Now, he was forced to hear that the very moves he made to elevate the Games were actively tearing them apart from the inside. Faced with a direct ultimatum from top corporate sponsors and veteran leaders, the board made a silent, historic decision that would leave Prince Harry utterly blindsided. The internal decision was swift, decisive, and deeply painful. To save the Invictus Games from financial collapse and protect its core mission, the board initiated a strict structural overhaul. Official directives were passed to scale back ceremonial roles, restrict non-essential camera crews, and eliminate high-profile public relations features that did not directly serve the athletes. The message was unmistakable. The event was returning to its military roots, with or without royal glamour. For Prince Harry, the emotional impact of this decision was devastating. Invictus was his baby, his safe haven, and the central pillar of his post-royal identity. Seeing his leadership questioned and his vision altered felt like a deeply personal betrayal. He had given a decade of his life to building this platform, believing it was the one achievement no one could ever take away from him. Now, the board he helped build was stepping in to protect the charity from his own management decisions. The realization hit Harry with crushing weight. In his urgent quest to protect his wife, build an independent global brand, and control his own story, he had inadvertently placed his most cherished foundation directly in the crosshairs of global public anger. The painful contrast between his original intent and the harsh reality was undeniable. As news of the organizational changes began leaking to the press, media questions surged. Journalists began asking why planned speeches had been shortened and why production access had been restricted. Prince Harry was left standing in the spotlight, forced to face the veteran community with a fractured reputation and an uncertain path forward. The sanctuary he built to heal his own past was now demanding that he step back so the real heroes could finally reclaim the center stage. As the global press began asking hard questions about sudden schedule changes, Harry was left to face the veteran community with a broken promise hanging heavily in the air. The fallout from the internal restructuring sent shockwaves through Prince Harry's personal world. Cut off from his royal family support network in the United Kingdom and facing severe pressure from commercial stakeholders in America, Harry found himself at an excruciating crossroads. The grand vision he had imagined, a seamless fusion of royal prestige, Hollywood glamour, and global philanthropy, was collapsing under the weight of public criticism and operational reality. The contrast between Harry's past and present was stark. A decade earlier, he had walked through athlete villages as a beloved war hero prince, welcomed with open arms by soldiers who saw him as one of their own. Now, he was viewed by many through a skeptical lens, a polarizing public figure navigating commercial deals, streaming contracts, and complex public relations battles. The raw, emotional connection he once shared with the military community had been strained by years of media drama and corporate positioning. Inside his California home, the emotional toll was evident. Harry was forced to reconcile two deeply conflicting identities: the devoted husband trying to build a modern media empire with his wife, and the dedicated military veteran bound by honor to serve his fallen brothers. He could no longer do both in the same way. The board made it crystal clear that future funding depended entirely on removing celebrity distractions from the athletic arenas. Harry had to make a painful choice. He could fight the board's demands to protect his current lifestyle narrative, or he could humbly accept the restrictions to save the Invictus Games from total destruction. The legacy he spent 10 years building hung in the balance, resting on a decision that would define the rest of his public life. With future games on the line and veteran trust hanging by a thin thread, Harry was forced to make a tragic choice that would redefine his identity forever. When the next Invictus Games opened, the transformation was immediately noticeable. The glamorous red carpet energy of previous years was replaced by a solemn, focused military atmosphere. Ceremonial protocols were stripped down to simple, traditional formats. Media credentials were strictly limited to sports journalists and traditional news outlets. Private production teams were nowhere to be found on the field. The focus had officially returned to where it always belonged: the courage, recovery, and strength of the wounded soldiers. Stepping onto the stage under these strict new conditions was a humbling experience for Prince Harry. There were no elaborate Hollywood-style entry sequences or extended personal branding speeches. Instead, Harry walked out to address the stadium as a simple patron and founder. The silence in the arena carried a heavy weight, a quiet reminder from the board, the sponsors, and the athletes that the cause was far greater than any single royal name. For the first time in years, Harry was forced to confront his work without the defense mechanisms of high-powered PR machines. It was a moment of profound vulnerability. He stood before thousands of veterans not as an untouchable global icon, but as a man who had made mistakes, lost his way in the bright lights of fame, and was now fighting to redeem his life's ultimate work. As the competitions began, the true spirit of Invictus flickered back to life. Wounded soldiers crossed finish lines, embraced their families, and celebrated miraculous recoveries. Harry watched from the stands, sitting among the families rather than in isolated VIP suites. He saw the joy on the athletes' faces, but the personal victory felt bittersweet. He had saved the games, but the fairy tale image of his post-royal identity had been permanently shattered. As the stadium lights dimmed on a quieted tournament, one fundamental question lingered over the future of the prince and his global brand. The story of the Invictus Games Backlash is a powerful caution about ambition, perception, and the true cost of fame. Prince Harry set out with noble intentions to build a sanctuary for wounded heroes and create a legacy of healing. But when a noble charitable cause becomes mixed with modern celebrity culture and personal image management, even the most honorable missions can fracture under the pressure. The high-stakes world of modern media demands constant attention, glamour, and personal narrative. But true service requires humility, quiet sacrifice, and shifting the spotlight entirely onto others. Harry learned this lesson through public outrage, broken trust, and deep personal pain. He tried to balance two fundamentally different worlds, only to discover that the values of Hollywood PR and military duty cannot easily exist together. The Invictus Games will survive this storm. The foundation remains strong, the athletes continue to inspire millions, and the core mission of veteran recovery remains as vital as ever. But the romanticized vision of the prince who saved the day has been forever changed. Harry was forced to realize that true leadership isn't about owning the stage. It's about knowing when to step back so others can shine. As the final sports medals are handed out and the quiet stadium empties, the quiet halls of the venue leave us with one final, haunting thought. In a world obsessed with fame, power, and high-stakes media narratives, what is the true price of keeping your soul intact when the world is watching your every move? When the fanfare clears and the cameras stop rolling, who really pays the ultimate price when a noble mission becomes a high-stakes arena of public opinion?